The Canucks fall flat in Minnesota, dropping a 5-2 decision to the Wild. We're breaking it down on Rink Wide Vancouver. And we welcome you inside the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studios. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Rink Wide brought to you in part by Bet365. I'm Jeff Patterson. He's Harman Dial of The Athletic and Canucks Convo. And we thank those of you that are checking us out on the live stream. Harman, I have a funny feeling that this one may be consumed as more of a podcast in the light of day on Sunday rather than right after the hockey. Apparently there's a baseball game going on.
Yeah, kind of a big deal in this country, apparently. It seems like the viewership numbers aren't very high for a typical hockey night in Canada.
We will press on. It might be a slightly shorter version of Rink Wide, partly because of the baseball game, partly because, let's be honest, there isn't a whole lot to dive into from a Canucks perspective. They've gotten away with a few. Kiefer Sherwood has played the hero. He can't score all the goals, although Drew O'Connor doing his best. Kiefer Sherwood here with 2 on the night. The Canucks have played 2 games, and they have 2 goal scorers on this road trip. It's just that both guys have had multiple goals. Sherwood had the hat trick the other night in the shootout victory in St. Louis. It was Drew O'Connor with his first 2 of the season, 13 games in, so that sort of tells you a little bit right there, but good on Drew O'Connor, not so much on the rest of the team, and even Thatcher Demko with a bit of an off night, bit of an error on the 1 goal, if we're going to talk more about baseball on this night. But it's too much to ask Thatcher Demko on a nightly basis to continue to hold down the fort if this team isn't going to score for him. It looked like it might be another 1-goal effort for the Vancouver Canucks. O'Connor did get a second one 7 minutes into the third period, made it 4-2 at the time, but an empty netter by Ryan Hartman, 5-2. Where were the best players on the Vancouver Canucks? I guess that's my question, and it's probably a question Adam Foote is asking about his bunch as well.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of in different points of the season, at the start of this season, at times last year, this Pettersson, Besser, DeBrusk trio as a line, and each time they're put together, they just don't seem to work for whatever reason. And I think Elias Pettersson offensively hasn't been the same without Connor Garland. Clearly he's missing that spark plug, play driver who can make plays at speed, create a lot of controlled entries. And when you have those 3 together, Pettersson, Besser, DeBrusk, they just look so slow together, right? That's the biggest thing that stands out to me, is that might be one of the slowest first lines across the entire NHL. That line is missing some dog in it too. It feels like they're not able to recover pucks on the forecheck. And I actually remember having a conversation with Jake DeBrusk about this. I want to say 2 or 3 games into the season, that line had gone off to a slow start. And I asked him specifically about the forecheck aspect. And I think he said multiple times that he takes responsibility for needing to be better on that basis. But even going back to last year when he scored the 28 goals and all things considered, it was a good year for him. The forechecking was just never consistently there for a guy who has plus speed, because you look at the other 2 players on the line. Well, Pettersson as the centerman, he's not usually going to be the first man in on the forecheck, right? So it's not on him to be the first guy barreling in to force a defenseman into a tough spot. His role is more as an F3 to stay and sort of anticipate where the opposition's breakout route is going to be, and to try and pounce and pick off passes. And then you have Brock Besser, who we know is legitimately slow, and he can hold plays up as an F2 if an F1 has done his job responsibly. But to me, on that line, it's Jake DeBrusk that you look to try and create some havoc on the forecheck. And that's where they just, as a line, not just tonight, but anytime they've been put together, they don't win enough pucks back on the forecheck. And then Pettersson, we can 100% say that he's looked better than he has last year, but still looks slow, transporting pucks to the neutral zone. And that's why that line doesn't create a lot off the rush. And this is what I have kept harping on time and time again, is if that trio isn't creating off the rush, and if they aren't winning pucks back on the forecheck, well, then you can understand why they don't possess the puck a whole lot and don't have many opportunities to manufacture offense.
Yeah, score effects actually flatter the Canucks, as they so often do in hockey games. They had out shooting the Wild 28-27. That doesn't tell the story of this night by any stretch of the imagination. And they even got 5 power play shots of the night, 3 of them coming on that final power play when the game is out of reach. That was Elias Pettersson's only shot on goal in the hockey game. Besser had 2 shots. DeBrusk had 2 shots. Kiefer Sherwood, who's been doing it all and all the heavy lifting, limited to just 1 shot, and it's going to happen. There's going to be nights when Kiefer Sherwood isn't able to save the day for the Canucks. And Lucas Reichel, I know it's only 5 games, but not a single shot and not his finest night by any stretch. And that's unfortunately about as good as it gets for the Vancouver Canucks these days without Connor Garland. The sliver of good news was that Quinn Hughes is with the team now in Minnesota, skated today, and it looks like he might get into the lineup. Hopefully for him and for the Canucks on Monday when the road trip wraps up in Nashville, and they can certainly use Quinn Hughes. They can use any of these injured guys that are getting back here, and hopefully it shouldn't be too long for Connor Garland. I guess, like they got the win in St. Louis. They're 500 on the road trip. They're 6-7 now on the season, so they continue to sort of hang in there. But when all these other teams around them are clawing away and picking up points, 6-7 obviously isn't the kind of record that the Vancouver Canucks want. I guess there's a couple of frustrations for me on this one, Harm. One is that the Minnesota Wild had 1 win in 9 games coming in. Now, they're not going to lose every game. And it used to be XL Energy Center. It's now Grand Casino Arena. It's a house of horrors for the Vancouver Canucks. They don't play what Roberto Luongo didn't play well in there. They have had trouble over the years getting results out of there. I think it's 7 straight wins now for Minnie on home ice against the Vancouver Canucks. But this is a night when Kirill Kaprizov doesn't have a point. The Canucks held him in check. He didn't beat them single-handedly as he's capable of. Vinny Hinostroza and Ryan Hartman, Marco Rossi. Remember when he was going to be a member of the Vancouver Canucks? Jonas Brodin with the knuckleball from the corner that handcuffed Thatcher Demko. But, given the state of affairs with the Canucks and all the guys that they're missing, you could understand if Kaprizov had one of those big nights and he sort of spearheaded the Minnesota offense. That wasn't the case, and yet Minnie still scores 5 on the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, it's tough because on one hand, for me, even when this Canucks team is healthy and they get Quinn Hughes, Connor Garland, Nils Höglander, a lot of these drivers back, this is still a team that, when they were mostly healthy at times last year, still struggled to manufacture offense. So it almost feels like an impossible task to, even though you're playing a Wild team that has struggled, and even though Kirill Kaprizov was left off the score sheet, it's still an awfully tough ask of this iteration of the Canucks roster to come out and deliver you any kind of results, because there's just such a shortage of offensive skill right now. And the 28 shots really do flatter them because there wasn't a lot of quality in that, right? Yeah. A lot of point shots that were just spammed from distance. There was such a shortage of grade A's. And the thing is, outside of maybe that top line, I can't actually blame anyone on this Canucks roster for, you should be doing a whole lot more, because you've got a group of players that don't really create a lot of offense at the NHL level. And yeah, in the absence of that, you're going to have to try and grind out lower scoring wins, hope that you get some opportunistic finishing, get some stellar goaltending. And I think on this night, they were a little bit looser defensively. I thought against St. Louis, they gave up a lot of shots, and there were a lot of B grade chances, but I actually thought against St. Louis, they did a better job of not allowing too many grade A's off the rush, and they were taking away the backdoor option pretty well. Whereas I thought against Minnesota, there were too many just breakdowns. You look at Hinostroza's goal, right? That's Tyler Myers, who I thought was really solid against the St. Louis Blues, and for the season as a whole, has been good for this hockey club. He sprays out to the wing, and that gives Hinostroza the path to dangle to the inside. And when you're a veteran defenseman defending the rush, it's a cardinal sin to kind of spray out in that moment. You know that your primary responsibility is to kind of cover the middle and try and take away players an opportunity to drive to the slot. So a few more mistakes there, and I think that definitely made the difference.
Well, and we're showing on the live stream here, Marcus Pettersson on the first goal I think he thought Matt Boldy was just going to rim it around the boards on the entry, but guess what? It's a fluid game and plans change. And Marcus Pettersson, same deal, kind of kicks himself almost to the boards, and Ratu on the back check, not enough back pressure there, and Boldy able to cut to the middle. They got a little lucky. Eriksson Ek off the shaft of his stick onto the path of Tarasenko, who deposited it for the opening goal, but we have seen this from Marcus Pettersson. Like, he does a lot of good for the Vancouver Canucks. We know about leadership and qualities and all that kind of stuff, but we saw it a few times last year defending off the rush as well. This is a power play, so it's a little bit different, but I think he kind of over-anticipated and ended up getting burned.
Yeah, and not just him, but Ratu there as well. That's where, if he was just a little bit quicker, and I understand the circumstances where Abby had the deep playoff run and he had an injury and it likely impacted his summer training, but a huge reason why Ratu took a step and was able to make some semblance of an impact at the NHL level is because last year at training camp we noticed right out of the gate, his quickness has improved to a point where you're seeing some progress. And I think this year at training camp, there was just no progress in his skating. And I think if he's even just a tad bit quicker, that makes a difference too in terms of being able to close that play. But for Marcus Pettersson as a whole, I agree. I think he's had some off nights. I thought at the start of the season when the Canucks penalty kill was around 91% with Teddy Blue.
Back in the day, I remember when the penalty kill was at 91%.
And that's when Marcus Pettersson, I thought, was making a huge impact, especially down low, breaking plays up, denying those east-west passing seams. But this is where I think Pettersson's form has slipped a little bit too, and it's had an impact on the penalty kill, because it isn't just on that Tarasenko goal, but there was another Minnesota power play where he had a couple of failed clearances and then allowed a side-to-side pass where he reached to stick out, and that's the type of pass that you expect Pettersson to deny. He wasn't able to get it, and Boldy ultimately ended up missing the net on that one-timer. But that's a true grade A chance on the power play, and you expect Marcus Pettersson to be able to break those kinds of plays up. There was also, on one of his first shifts, an exit scenario where he kind of just deferred to Tom Willander and put him in a tough spot. And credit to Willander, he showed nice escapability behind the net to get out of trouble and get the puck back to Marcus Pettersson, and they were able to cleanly work the puck up the ice. But that was a spot where I thought, okay, as a veteran, I would have liked to see you take charge on that exit. So definitely his game could use a little bit more polish right now.
It is Rink Wide Vancouver. We're going to get to our stat that stands out. This isn't it, but we talked about a bit of a sluggish start. Minnie had the first 4 shots of this hockey game. Canucks only had 4 shots in the first period. Mackenzie McEachern was the only Canuck forward that had a shot on goal in the opening 20 minutes. That sort of sums it up. Again, that's not our stat that stands out, but that kind of tells you. I think Hronek had 2 and McEachern had 2. That adds up to the 4 shots that the Canucks had in the opening period of play. They got out of it down 1-0 on the Tarasenko goal, and then Drew O'Connor tied the game 5 minutes into the second. Marco Rossi on a rebound after Elias Pettersson gets waved out of the circle. Jake DeBrusk gets his clock cleaned in the faceoff. Not a centerman, but there are times where you just have to find a way to fight it off, and Rossi was able to park the rebound there for his third of the year. So it was 2-1 Minnie after 2 periods of play. And then Rossi takes a penalty at the 20-minute mark of the second period. Canucks started the third on the power play harm. And again, that was part of the frustration. We talk about, yes, they're without some key elements here, but there's still enough top-end talent to cobble together what should be a reasonable power play. And that, to me, was one of the turning points in this hockey game, because put one in there, it's a 2-2 tie, and who knows where it goes. But just they played 4 corners essentially on that power play, just kept kicking it around. I don't know if they thought somebody was going to morph into Leon Draisaitl and score from a foot off the goal line, but it was weird. That was unlike other Canuck power plays. It was stagnant. Maybe that part's not unlike other Canuck power plays, but it just felt like they were putting the puck way too deep for anything good to happen, and Minnesota was quite happy to let them have the perimeter there, nothing doing. And then, of course, Hinostroza scores, then Brodin, I think 1 minute and 39 seconds apart, and at that point, it was off to the races for the Minnesota Wild. But just a quick thought on that power play to start the third period.
Well, that power play was interesting because it did do a lot of things right as well, in the sense that they finally got set up, right? That's been a huge story for when this power play hasn't been clicking, is their entries have been a problem. And it's like them getting set up was already a sense of, okay, they've got an opportunity to attack there. But this is where I think some of their execution could have been better. Besser missed the net on a chance that Sherwood set him up on, which I thought was a grade A opportunity. And it wasn't the only grade A opportunity of the game that Brock Besser missed the net on. There was a faceoff, I want to say, in the second period on Pettersson's weak side where Pettersson won the draw straight to Besser. Great look for him in a pure goal scorer spot, and again wasn't able to hit the net. So that was a little bit disappointing. And then it was fascinating because on that power play, Elias Pettersson was threading like cross slot passes from side to side, but I would have liked to see him show more of a killer instinct as a shooter, right? The first pass that he made across, so I thought, all right, he had an opportunity to maybe just fire the puck and create something happen. But all right, that was a really nice east-west pass, and it led to a Sherwood one-timer opportunity. That's fine. As the play continued, Pettersson got the opportunity again, and the Wild penalty killers were a little bit slow closing on him. And I thought, if he's instinctual, this is an opportunity to just drive and let a shot fly. A little bit hesitant, a little bit similar to times last year where he was a little bit gun shy to let a shot off. And this is part of, unfortunately, the process of watching Pettersson try and get back to his game. Is some parts are going to look good, and I think you're seeing that his passing from stationary positions is a lot more poised, and yeah, defensively feels like he keeps finding another level. But again, just the lack of killer instinct with the shot, I think, is still something that could have made a difference on that power play specifically, because they had the control. They even had some nice movement, but just didn't have that finishing both with him and with the earlier Besser chance too.
Also, and it came against the Minnesota penalty kill that was running at 45% on home ice this season. Had given up 6 goals on 11 opportunities already, 60% overall, a home and away. And so worst penalty kill in the NHL. It felt like an opportunity right there to start the third period, an opportunity that gets away from the Vancouver Canucks. Hit us up with a super chat. We have been supporting the BC Mental Health Foundation for a couple of seasons now, and any one of your super chat contributions will go to fund the great work of the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. And we appreciate everybody that gets through with super chats here on Rink Wide. Let's get to the 3 stars of this hockey game. We'll get the 3 stars in the building and then have our own. The 3 stars are brought to you by Greta Bar YVR. Great place to catch all the games. What a weekend for sports, and I'm sure Greta is busy. If you're looking for a place to watch games on TV, they've got you covered with all sorts of big screens. They got the street food menu, got the weekly drink specials. They've got game night specials as well on both food and drink, and then, of course, all the arcade games as well. It's a ton of fun. If you haven't checked it out, do yourself a favor. Greta Bar, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin. All right, 3 stars in the building, selected by the Wild Media. Clean sweep for the home team. Jonas Brodin is the first star. Joel Eriksson Ek is star number 2. Tough crowd here. Vladimir Tarasenko had 3 points, and he's the 3rd star in the building. A little higher here on Rink Wide. He opens the scoring, sets the tone. A lead that Minnesota would never relinquish. The game was tied 1-1, but Minnesota never trailed in this thing. There's Drew O'Connor for a 2nd straight game, which kind of tells you a story as well. Good on him. He's been skating miles, and maybe the points now starting to come a little bit for Drew O'Connor. Whatever the case, we're shortchanging him on our 3 stars because he had both Canuck goals. He had a 2-goal night, and there's Jonas Brodin, 1 goal, 1 assist. And I want to talk about the Brodin goal. Again, at 3-1, it didn't feel like the Canucks had a comeback coming, but Thatcher Demko has been so good for this Vancouver Canuck team by any measure. I mean, there are metrics out there, Harm, that suggested he hadn't let in a bad goal yet this season. I think it's safe to say that he has let in one now. Brodin from a sharp angle, and it just seemed to handcuff him off the glove. It even surprised, like Demko, I think, thought he had the puck. He didn't. Into the net it goes. It made it 4-1 at the time, and maybe not the best night for Thatcher Demko, who, again, has been authoring this incredible story, keeping the Canucks in games. He wants to put his best foot forward to sort of be in the mix for the U.S. Olympic team. Bill Guerin, the general manager of Team USA, probably there looking on, and unfortunately for Thatcher Demko, kind of fumbled one. But I'm certainly not pinning the loss on him, but like the team, just not good enough overall to get the job done.
Yeah, that goal is one that you rarely see Demko surrender. He's usually so good at sealing his posts, and just such a weird one where he was trying to catch it and it goes off his glove and through him. It's a really weird one, and I think through the first 40 minutes, though, the shot totals probably don't reflect how many really high-quality chances that the Wild had, especially in that first period where it felt like Minnesota was just dominating offense's own possession time, and it's also just really taxing as a goaltender, not just the shots, but all the different crease movements that are involved. When Minnesota had a ton of plays where they had near scoring chances, you can call them, where it's like a dazzling entry by someone like Kaprizov, and then they try and make the pass into the slot, and then maybe somebody flubs the chance or they miss the net. For a goaltender, you're still making the crease movements. That's still stress and workload on your body. Not trying to suggest that that was part of what led to the soft goal that Brodin surrendered, but overall, just another night where he was under siege for large stretches, and I actually thought through the first 40 minutes he was a huge reason why this game was as close as it was. You obviously don't like seeing that Brodin goal go in, but I'll be honest, by the time they scored that, I didn't think the Canucks had multiple goals in the third period to come back in that game anyway.
No, I'm with you. Like, if he's going to give up a moldy one, do it then. Like, get it out of the way. And,
exactly.
And, it's not a backbreaker. It didn't determine the outcome. But you're right. Like, when I look through my notes in the second period, Marcus Johansson in front, great glove save by Thatcher Demko. Hinostroza on an entry just took the puck down the right side, drove hard to the net. Made the save there. And then Tarasenko at the side, puck kicked to him with about 6 minutes left in the period. Again, Demko makes the save, covers the puck, and then it was off the face-off there that Marco Rossi was able to score. So those were just ones that I made note of. And I don't have many notes about Canuck chances at the other end of the ice in that second period, even though the shots were 13-12 in Minnesota's favor. So 5-2 into the books here. Canucks, as I mentioned a little earlier, 6-7 on the season. Again, not where they want to be, but given the circumstances, it's not the end of the world. They're 4-4 on the road. They've been busy. 8 of these first 13 games now have been on the road, and 1-1 of the road trip, so a chance on Monday afternoon now into Nashville against a Predators team that we'll talk a little bit more of later. They've been limping badly too, but they did beat the Calgary Flames earlier today. All right, let's get to the stat that stands out. Stat that stands out here on Rink Wide is delivered by Uber Eats, and every time the Canucks play at home, you can get a buy one, get one 6-piece chicken McNuggets from McDonald's in Vancouver only on Uber Eats. From game day eats to paper plates and napkins if you're hosting, to all the ingredients you need to make your favorite game day dip. Before, during, or after the game, Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. Hashtag crave the stats. I feel like I'm stepping on your toe here because this is your domain on Convo. But we came up with this one for the stat that stands out tonight. Again, Drew O'Connor, good for him. They'll take contributions from anybody if this can get him going a little bit. Again, steps in the right direction, I suppose. Tonight was Drew O'Connor's second 2-goal game in his National Hockey League career, his first since December 31st of 24. So coming up on a year. That happened in Detroit when he was a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. No hat tricks for Drew O'Connor. You wouldn't expect him necessarily to be a hat trick kind of guy, but was one away from matching Kiefer Sherwood, who had a 3-goal performance the other night in St. Louis. And there have now been guys that have reached double digits. So Kiefer Sherwood, he's got some work to do. He's got to catch up because he's sitting on 9, which is just an incredible total. But yes, he had a share of the lead going into this game, but Nathan McKinnon scored, and Cole Caulfield, I believe, also scored. So there's a bunch of other games going on. There may be other guys that have got to double digits too, but Kiefer Sherwood is now sitting at least 1 off the National Hockey League lead in that department. Want to ask you about the Abby guys, as we refer to them, particularly that Abbotsford, the Calder Cup line, in a moment. This segment of Rink Wide is brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers and the Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid, and its no-compromise approach to electric vehicles that offers the best of both worlds. Up to 72 kilometers on battery alone, and that's enough to get you from downtown to the rink to the grocery store and then home to recharge. And it seamlessly transitions from electric mode to the gas engine for a combined range of 962 kilometers. No sacrifices when it comes to horsepower or style with its sleek, low, and wide exterior and sophisticated interior. And it's loaded with tech that you can actually use. And right now, you can lease a 2025 Prius plug-in hybrid SE from $99 weekly at 3.49% APR for 64 months with $3,600 down, and that includes a $3,000 discount. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. All right, we talked about the fact that Canucks are without a handful of players, and that forces others into some situations. I suppose, we kind of point to the struggles of the top of the lineup. When you don't have much below it, it allows the other team to load up defensively and try to keep those guys in check and then make some of the other guys in the Canuck lineup beat you. And the other night, obviously, Kiefer Sherwood was able to go off and get his 3. That, as we said, didn't happen in this hockey game. I thought it was a really tough first period for that Abbotsford line and Arshdeep Bains in particular with the 2 hooking penalties.
Yeah, as a fourth line, you want to do your best to be as responsible as possible defensively, and I think that Abbey line trio has accomplished that for most of this year. Now, would you maybe want a little bit more offense out of Arshdeep Bains and especially Linus Karlsson? I'm not going to include Max Sasson in that conversation because he's chipped in with some goals. Yeah, absolutely. You'd like more offensive output out of Bains and Karlsson, but I think up until this point, up until this game, that line has more or less done its job as a fourth line. It's not like they've been playing second or third line caliber minutes where they've been letting the team down. But yeah, I'd say that first period was the first clear sign of, all right, Bains particularly really struggling, probably his worst period of the season to this point. And I think now that he's gained more experience at the NHL level, those are the types of mistakes that you just hope he would have already learned from during his previous cups of coffee at the NHL level. And look, one of them, for example, if it had just been the Hartman one, I could understand because Hartman was kind of driving in the slot. It looked like he was preparing for scoring chance, and you see penalties like that happen. But to have 2 of them in one period and give 2 opportunities to a potent Minnesota power play, we've talked about how woeful their PK is. It's hilarious because on the other end of the spectrum, the power play has been so dominant and has accounted for nearly half the team's offensive output as a whole. You just don't want to put Minnesota's power play to work twice in one period. And I think that line as a whole, there's maybe one shift that comes to mind where they were able to use their speed to win a puck back on the forecheck and spend some time in the offensive zone. Other than that, I don't think they did a good enough job, Bains and Sasson particularly, of using their pace to create problems for the opposition. But I don't want to let one bad game distract people from, I just think they're doing their job as a fourth line. When I look at their numbers for the season as a whole, for example, with Linus Karlsson on the ice or Bains, you could look at it similarly. Shots are basically break even at 5-on-5, which is saying something because the Canucks at 5-on-5 have been bleeding a lot more shots against than they have for. And most importantly, on the scoreboard, they're up 4-2 during Linus Karlsson's 5-on-5 shifts and up 3-2 during Bains and Sasson's 5-on-5 shifts. So they've limited the damage defensively. They haven't been scored on a lot. And I think, tough night for them against Minnesota. But I saw a bunch of people saying, like, oh, send Bains down. And, like, first of all, who from the American League are you going to call up that's going to be better than what they have right now?
Right.
And secondly, let's relax, guys. They're a fourth line that more than 10 games of the season has only been on the ice for 2 5-on-5 goals against and has more than held their own in their minutes. So, I get it. Yeah. More nights like this, there are going to be problems, but they've been fine for the year as a whole. Well,
and for the most part, the Canucks, I think, have done a pretty good job of trying to shelter them and get them into spots that allow them to succeed. Out on the road, it's difficult. And in that first period, you mentioned the one penalty was on Hartman, but the other one, they were trapped out there against the Kaprizov line, and that's when they got into all sorts of trouble. It was a difficult night for Max Sasson. He got smoked early in the second period by Pitlick, and you could see that he was feeling that one. And he stayed in the hockey game, but on nights where those guys have generally, as you said, spent time in the offensive zone, tried to be creative. This was not a banner night, but it wasn't a banner night, really, for anybody save for Drew O'Connor and his line mates, Atu Ratu, and give Mackenzie McEachern. And this guy wants to be in the NHL. He's been in the NHL. For him to be able to chip in. And I like the quick shot that forced the rebound on the first O'Connor goal. It's hard to argue with a guy that's been recalled from the farm that comes in and is able to at least pull the rope in the right direction, generate a little bit of offense. All right, so the Canucks will move on to Nashville. Still a chance to make this a successful road trip, just as the last one was, when they ended up going 3-2 there. Here they're at 1-1, so the game on Monday sort of will swing the balance of this road trip. And as we mentioned, they're expected to get Quinn Hughes back. Obviously, he'll play, and I would think he'll play a lot, although they may have to govern his minutes. If it, coming back off a groin injury, the last thing they want to do is have him back on the shelf, and we saw that happen last season. So be curious to see his usage. But is it as simple, Harm? Getting the captain back, a left shot guy, that he comes in and P.O. Joseph comes out of this lineup and Tom Willander stays in?
I think so, 100%. And I didn't think I was going to say that after Villander's debut game, where I thought against the Rangers, all right, a few pinches where he was putting himself out of position. But his second game against the Blues, over 19 minutes of ice time. And tonight, I thought, especially considering just look at the deployment and the matchups. This is a guy that third game of his NHL career, the Minnesota Wild forward that he spent the most minutes against at 5-on-5 was Kirill Kaprizov. He got the top end of Minnesota's lineup because they've been dealing with so many injuries, and because he's mostly been doing his job to prove in that St. Louis game that he can hang at the NHL level. And you look at the results. He was the Canucks leader at 5-on-5.
Of course he king. I see that. Yeah.
The shot attempts were 19-10 in a game where the Canucks had a tough time controlling play. So I thought Villander has looked like he's belonged. And on the other side of the coin, I think P.O. Joseph hasn't done enough to prove to me anyway that he deserves to 100% be in the lineup. So, I would 100% take Joseph out and keep Villander in the lineup. I think he's earned it.
All right. I want to get to our Bet365 line of this night, and we're already looking ahead to games in the National Hockey League on Sunday, and one that has caught my attention particularly, and that is the San Jose Sharks at home to the Detroit Red Wings. Now, this is back-to-back for the Sharks, but the plucky Sharks beat the Colorado Avalanche in overtime, and it was an afternoon game, so this is an evening game. They get a little bonus rest there. Never really sure what you're going to get from the Red Wings on a night-to-night basis. You can get the Sharks at plus 155 at home. They're young. They're fun. They're not going to win every game, and certainly haven't, but it's got a sneaking suspicion that win over Colorado should do a world of good for them, and we'll see if they can back it up with another one at home against the Red Wings. Whatever your bet, is never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. Use code NATION to get you started. And a reminder, you must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. And look at that. The Vancouver Canucks are right back in Nashville. They were there like 10 days ago and lost 2-1 to the Predators, who haven't won a lot of hockey games, haven't beaten a lot of teams, but they did find a way to eke out a 2-1 victory over the Vancouver Canucks, and they get a 4-2 win this afternoon over the Calgary Flames. So it's been a struggle. They're without Roman Josi. He's injured. Canucks won't feel sorry for Predators without their captain, but that's leaves a gaping hole, especially as the Canucks look like they're going to get their captain back. Let's just hope, fingers crossed here, Harm, that not even the outcome, just the entertainment value, because the last time they were at Bridgestone was an absolute dog of a hockey game.
Yeah, and I think broadly speaking, win or lose, this team has been a pretty tough watch from an entertainment standpoint. And again, that's true even when you have Quinn and Garland in the lineup. And when you subtract those guys, I mean, geez, a couple times I'll watch a Canucks game and then flip on to another game. Usually one involving like a Colorado or a Vegas or a
7-5,
Utah.
6-5,
And
like back and forth. Yeah.
The joke I made on the PDO cast with Dimitri is it's like going from 1x speed to 2x speed on a YouTube video, just watching the comparison of speed and skill wise. So yeah, you're hoping that the entertainment value is there, and you're more hoping also just that they're able to clean things up defensively. I think that's my concern with this Canucks team right now. I think they did a much better job of it against St. Louis, but broadly speaking, for the whole this year, it's one thing to, all right, you're missing a lot of key drivers. It's tough to manufacture offense. I can understand that. And I actually expect that, right? This is a team that isn't going to create a lot of chances, but in front of your goaltenders, you want to limit the number of odd man rushes against. You want to limit the amount of damage that the other team is able to inflict on you from the home plate area. And against Minnesota this past night, felt like a lot of weird plays where their net front coverage, and you certainly on the Rossi goal, you saw two guys doubling up, and we talk about P.O. Joseph not having a banner night. That Rossi was his guy on that goal, but he instead went to tie up the net front guy who was already in Myers' kind of area.
Yeah.
But also just a lot of those it'd be like the plays on one side of the offensive zone, and then the weak side forward at the front of the net would somehow be wide open. And there were like 2 or 3 chances that way. Those are the kind of details that, all right, if we're not going to be a team that piles up the grade A scoring chances offensively, you at least got to do a better job of limiting them defensively. And that's one of my concerns about this team in the aftermath of Rick Tocchet's departure. Is I don't think Rick Tocchet was a perfect coach by any means, but one thing he gave this team undeniably was some semblance of defensive structure on a night in, night out basis. And for this season as a whole, how many nights have we walked away from a game saying, oh, that was a Canucks defensive masterclass. They gave up nothing. And that's concerning to me, big picture, even when bodies come back, for whether this team can make the playoffs or not. Because again, even when you get Quinn Hughes and Connor Garland back, this is still not a team that's going to consistently score 4, 5, 6 goals a game. So I want to see them tighten up, especially because you're facing a Predators team that really lacks offensive juice and doesn't usually score a lot of goals.
No, one of the worst power plays in the National Hockey League. Ryan O'Reilly leads the team. He's got 5 goals and 9 points. Didn't figure in the scoring today. Nanaimo's Matthew Wood had a goal and an assist. He scored in back-to-back games. UC Saros has started 11 of 13 games, and he's got reasonable numbers, but that's a ridiculous workload. It's nothing new to him, but you just wonder to what end, given the direction of the Nashville Predators. But I want to finish up here with Steven Stamkos, because it's a name that apparently has been linked to the Vancouver Canucks, at least tire kicking there. It just doesn't feel like a fit. Wasn't really a fit in Nashville. I don't think it's a fit in Vancouver either. And there's not the kind of guy that the Canucks should be chasing, even though we know the owner loves his big names. But what's going on with Steven Stamkos, Harm? 1 goal in 13 hockey games. That's not the Steven Stamkos that we've seen over a decade and more here in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, he doesn't have a single 5-on-5 goal right now. And that's kind of shocking for a player that was one of the best goal scorers of his generation. You can see too, shot rate at 5-on-5 has dipped well below where it was at in Tampa. And when he was in Tampa, he was averaging around 7 shots individually per 60 minutes. He's well below 5, both last year and this season. But the thing is, the writing was on the wall for as far as Steven Stamkos being in decline before he even got to Nashville. I remember writing about this. His 5-on-5 play driving numbers were, especially adjusted for teammate and line mate quality, very poor. His 5-on-5 even point production had dipped the last 2-3 years in Tampa. And really the reason why he was still a prolific goal scorer and his point totals looked flashy in those final years in Tampa is because he played on that ridiculously talented top unit where he just feasted on the left circle, being fed passes by Kucherov. And And that's the difference, right? Is you're on that Tampa power play one. Think about how many threats are on that unit. It's not just Kucherov. It's Point in the bumper. They've always, whether it's been Nick Paul or Killorn before he left for Anaheim, they've always had an elite net front guy. Had been quarterbacking. You couldn't, as a penalty kill, put all your eggs into the basket of let's put all our attention on Steven Stamkos, because Kucherov or somebody else, Point, was going to burn you. Whereas you go to Nashville, and they've got some individual talent, but it's just not the same when you don't have Kucherov making those ridiculous seam passes, and without that power play production, that to me is a massive reason why he's fell off. But this is just, he's 35 years old.
Yeah.
And the fit has been poor in the sense that there's no playmaking center in Nashville to drive zone entries, play with speed, attract the opposition of the attention, to create space for Stamkos. So it's just been a poor fit all around. And the signs were all kind of there even before he got to Nashville that, all right, he's not the player that he was in his prime.
Well, that's why I say the Vancouver Canucks should run screaming. The fact that they're linked to him in any way, just not what this team needs in the short term or over the long haul. So we'll see where that one goes. 5:30 on Monday. Note the start time, a little different. Usually games in Nashville are 5 o'clock, but this one's a 5:30 start, probably for television purposes. Hey, a reminder to follow us on all of our socials, but particularly we want to remind you about the Rink Wide YouTube channel, trying to beef it up and provide additional content this season compared to last. Canucks have been on the road so much we haven't had a chance to cover a lot of practices. Even when they've been home, they haven't had many practices, but we'll get you practice video, post-practice and game day scrums and all that kind of stuff, and it'll be posted at our Rink Wide YouTube channel. So make sure that you're subscribed there, set your notifications so that you do not miss a thing. If you missed this hockey game and you're listening back to the podcast, you didn't really miss an awful lot.
Don't watch it
in that regard either. Yeah, don't go and watch the game. Hopefully we've provided you a 45-minute little capsule and on to Nashville, and really, Harm, a chance here, as we said, go 2-1 on the road trip, get back to 500. But beyond that, and I know they can only play games one at a time, and their focus will be on Nashville, but they come off the road. They've got Chicago and Columbus to start a little homestand as well. And then it gets nasty in a hurry. Like they start to run that mid-November gauntlet, Winnipeg or Colorado, Winnipeg, out on the road, Carolina, Tampa, Florida. They come on home. I think they got Dallas after that. So there really is an importance here to this next little stretch of games to cobble together some points somehow, some way, even if it's ugly, just because let's be honest, they're going to be up against it. Even if they get some healthy bodies back, that run of 6 in a row against like all legitimate Stanley Cup contenders, that's going to be tough, obviously, for the Vancouver Canucks. So an opportunity presenting itself over these next 3 games. They've got to find a way to keep their head above water.
Yeah, and if Quinn is able to get back, that's a massive boost, right?
Yeah.
He'll help you 5-on-5 on the power play, obviously. Even though Phil Pronik, I think, has actually done a decent job as a fill-in replacement. But you're right. They're in a tough spot because even with Quinn back, this isn't a gimme, despite how mediocre and frankly bad the Nashville Predators are. Because you still got so many absences up front, and you haven't found your ideal top 6 line combinations. Your center depth is still kind of a mess. So even with Quinn Hughes, it's a challenge, and you need, however ugly it is, you need all the dubs you can get, because you're right. If this team, actually, regardless of whether of how these next few games go, if you don't play that 2-week stretch well enough, and the process continues looking like this, even if you get a body or 2 back, I don't want to say your season might be over, but you might be staring at a pretty significant point deficit in November, which is the last thing this team wants. So you're right. It's likely not going to be pretty, but hopefully they can feast on the energy of maybe getting your captain back and him being able to log a ton of minutes on the back end.
So out of Minnesota into Nashville, 5:30 on Monday from Music City. That's next up for the Canucks. That's when we'll have our next episode of Rink Wide Vancouver. Harm will have Convo on Mondays, writing at The Athletic. He's got it covered. And we appreciate you stepping in here. You'll get a chance to do this a few times, or we'll get a chance to do it with you a few times over the course of the season. But up against baseball and everything else on a crazy busy sports Saturday, really appreciate you taking a little time to jump on here at Rink Wide.
A lot of fun as always, even if the game wasn't the funnest.
It was not a Game 7 for a championship. That much is for certain. It was one of 82, and maybe the less we speak of it, the better on to Nashville on Monday. For Mike Rogerson, working behind the scenes, for Harm, I'm Jeff. Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Rink Wide Vancouver.